my guy Brockman here is always wondering, when's it going to go down? When is a team basically going to say to a quarterback, especially, you have not won enough yet, and it does appear to be Jerry might be doing that with Dak, although I think that's the wrong fight to pick on that front. And I don't know if he's trying to pick it, but somebody's going to go and say, I am not going to create a $50 million a year value for this quarterback, and I'll just let him walk. I'll let him walk, and we'll go back to something else here, or I'm going to insist on a $40 million thing, and it'll be a stink, and we'll have to deal with it during the season. My coach will have to deal with it. Are we going to see that, or that'll never happen, Mike?
I remember arguing 5 years ago this month that the Rams should do that with Jared Goff, but they were determined to sign him to a new contract. They paid him market value, and 2 seasons later, they had to tuck an extra first-round pick into the Matthew Stafford trade package to get Goff's contract off the books. And then this year, I thought maybe the Lions would do it with Goff. And here he is with $53 million per year in new money. I think the Dolphins with Tua Tagovailoa might be considering something along those lines. And it's not necessarily we're going to let you walk. It's we're going to let you become a free agent. We're going to let you see what else is out there. Because at the end of the day, what's out there might not be as good as what the current team is willing to pay. And I think before the season starts, the Dolphins will make their last best multi-year offer to Tua, and he's going to have to decide, do I take it or do I play under my 5th-year option at $23.1 million and kick the can for a year and assume the injury risk, assume that I play well enough, and hope that I can cash in either franchise tag, long-term deal, or they let me go to the market? That's the question I asked with Goff. And all due respect, look, Goff has been far better with the Lions than we thought he was going to be.
Yes.
Who are the Lions competing with when they give him $53 million a year? Who are the Cowboys competing with if they give Dak 60? Who are the Dolphins competing with if they give Tua 50? Who's the or else? And there's a point where I think one of these teams is going to say, we're just not going to compete with ourselves. We're not going to bid against ourselves. We want to see what else is out there because we get a better deal that way.
He's talking your language, Chris.
Thank you, Mike, for being a voice of reason. Like, why is Jacksonville going to give Trevor Lawrence $50 million? What has he done to deserve that?
Yeah, you're right. And they've got him under contract for 2 more years. Now, on one hand, you want to treat your franchise quarterback a certain way and it sends the right message, et cetera, et cetera. You justify the investment you made. But yeah, is it good business sense? Now, Lawrence, after his 2nd year, looked like he was on the verge of being a top 5 quarterback. Last year, things went haywire. The blocking wasn't very good. He's made it clear, ideally, he'll get a contract before training camp starts. But not every team is going to break the bank for every first-round pick that's 3 years in to a rookie deal and has year 4 and 5th-year option left. The Vikings didn't do it with Justin Jefferson last year. They almost did. There's no guarantee. There's no requirement that a team does it. I'd like to think that teams are going to be inclined to try, but it's one thing to say, we'd like to give you a new contract. It's another thing to come up with a number that both sides can agree on. And I think that's been the issue with Dak, because his leverage in part comes from the necessity to get that cap number down. That gives him even more basis to say, I want 60 or more. But you've got to find an agreement. You got to get a middle ground. And the Jaguars are going to try to do it with Lawrence. The Dolphins have been trying to do it with Tua. And the Lions surprisingly did it a few weeks back with Jared Goff.
So you think the Dolphins might stick to it's got to start with a 4 for Tua, and that might grind a gear or something like that? I mean, is that what you're saying? Like that's what's going on?
I think that whatever their last best offer is, it's going to be short of what he wants. He said this week, the market is the market.
Yes, he did.
But why? And this is something Chris Sims rails about from time to time on PFT Live, and I agree with him completely. We've gone through phases where next young quarterback who is due to get a second contract instantly becomes the highest paid player in the history of the sport. And it's a little bit more here, a little bit more there, a little bit more there. Why? Why is that? Why should Tua get 55 just because he's eligible for a new contract? Why? Like, there needs to be tiers. And that's the problem. The teams, as evidenced by what we saw with the Lions and Jared Goff, they're not willing to draw that line. They're not willing to say, we'll play this out and we'll run the risk of you possibly leaving. Like Kirk Cousins left the Vikings. The Vikings did exactly what you're saying, and I have to remind myself of that. We ask, when is a team finally going to do it? And specifically with a young quarterback, but the Vikings did it with an old and injured quarterback. They had a number they budgeted, and go see what's out there. And here come the Falcons at $45 million a year. And that probably surprised the Vikings and surprised Kirk Cousins, and that's why he left. So I just think regardless of whether or not you lose the guy, you got to be willing to lose the guy and then start over again with somebody else if you think this is a guy that isn't going to consistently get you in the hunt for championships.
Well, I mean, it used to be in the prior collective bargaining agreement, Mike, as you know, the highest paid player in the history of the game used to be a kid who had never played it down in the NFL. And you had to pay whoever you were drafting at the quarterback spot, first or second or third overall, the most generationally enriching contract in the history of the NFL, and the owners rightfully didn't want to do that. I mean, name me another business in the country, like the top law firm in the United States is not paying the top law student in the United States the highest paid salary in the history of the firm that's been around since 1920. You know, so now it's just a situation where at least you get 3-4 years to see something before the market might dictate terms that that ownership is finding difficult to swallow. So I guess at least that's an improvement. The slotting is an interesting idea. I just don't know who's going to do that for a young player that they drafted first, second, third overall. That said, you know, the draft from 3 years ago is Trevor Lawrence is the only guy still left with his original team, and everybody else is backing up right now.
And I think teams are more willing to roll the dice on quarterbacks now because that dynamic has changed where, you know, the Jamarcus Russell damage to the Raiders wasn't just we don't have a quarterback. It's we have havoc wreaked on our salary cap because of the financial investment that was made in that quarterback. And it got so bad that I remember in 2008, there was speculation that Bill Parcells in his first year running the show in Miami was just going to pass with the first pick and pass again and keep passing until he got to a slot where he was comfortable paying that money to whoever they took in that slot. It didn't happen, but there was at least talk that they might do that. That's how bad it was. But the other side of that now, Rich, and this is why I get a little antsy when teams decide to wait 4 years or longer to give a guy his contract, because if you never got the big payday you would have gotten under the old system, but you've played well enough that you would have justified it, why are you making this guy wait? And some guys will do it. Remember the Kyler Murray manifesto that his agent put on X where you needed a magnifying glass to read it single space? Hey, he wasn't going to play in the fourth year of his contract for $4 or $5 million or whatever it was, and they did it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I think that every player who ends up playing great under a rookie contract, whatever round, after 3 years, when that window opens on a second contract, you should say, I am not showing up until I get my contract. That's what Ezekiel Elliott did. That's what Kyler Murray did. That's what these guys need to do. Get paid as soon as you can.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.